Okay, so this is our fourth installment of the grant writing training. And today we're going to start off by something I was supposed to do last week and I forgot. I was going to show you a completed grant application, what it looked like when it was all through, based on what you get back after you submit it. So we're going to share my screen here and pull this up. So what we're looking at here is make this a little bigger. Okay, so we're looking at an email that I got back from the grant portal that I was using. I was using a Bank of America a grant portal to do all the applying, answering all their questions. And so it takes it takes the questions and all your answers and merges it all together and sends you an email back. So this came into my email and it's got a couple of opening paragraphs on it just saying, hey, we got your application, and they tell you what they're going to do next. Like, you'll be, we'll let you know, or you'll be receiving notifications, whatever their follow-up steps are. Those are told to you in the email. And then it starts off with the top of the application. They're feeding this back to you. This is what you saw online, but now they're feeding it back to you. And so these are the instructions that they had begin the application. That starts the email, and then gives you the table of contents, and then here's the sections and the questions and the answers. So I'm going to go through this in some amount of detail, so you can kind of get a gist for what's going on. And remember, we're looking at a PDF printout of an email. So you're going to see some headings and some page numbers and stuff. Just ignore all that. It's just part of, saving it as a PDF when it came to you as an email. But they're going to ask you to put in your federal tax ID. And so that's your EIN number. So that's what this field is. And here's the answer is put right there. Okay. So it doesn't really, in this format, it doesn't distinguish between the questions and the answers very well. And also, you'll remember some of the questions are mandatory and some are optional. So sometimes on here, you'll see a question, but then there's a blank. That's because it was optional and we didn't need to put an answer in there. But most of the fields are mandatory. So you'll see a question and then an answer. So organization name, and then we put this as our answer. Legal name of organization if different from above. We don't have something different, so that's blank. Benefiting organization, if you're using a fiscal sponsor, that's some obscure thing that they do in nonprofit sometimes. We don't do that, so that's blank. Organization NTEE. So you have to have an NTEE code for what type of organization you are. And on the online web page grant application, there's a way to look that up. They give you a tool to look up what kind of organization you are. Then you select that, then it puts it in there. So we did that, and the answer we selected was it's an education, fundraising, and fund distribution organization. That's some sort of nonprofit code that they used, at Bank of America or at that foundation. Then here's our mailing address, our phone numbers, our phone number, and our website. So this number right here is just an example. They're saying put it in this format or put it in this, and here's a sample web address. Those are examples, and then this is our answer down here. Okay. Whoops, that's the answer. Oh, anyway, my mouse is acting up today. Okay, so then the next question is overview of organization. Provide a brief overview of organization. And so this paragraph is our answer. That's usually limited. It doesn't show on this form, but on the screen it might have said, 150 characters or less, or 300 characters or less. You've got a size of a box you're trying to conform to. So our answer fit that limitation of the length of the answer. Okay. Then the next question is number of full-time employees. We had 0. Number of part-time employees was 3. Number of volunteers was 60. Okay. So whatever that is for your organization, that's what you put in there. Then there's a section called contact information, and they have two parts. And on this one, they have who's the head of the organization, all the contact information for that person, and then the person. So that's down to here to the email, and then the next field is the primary contact for the request. In other words, this part is like the executive director, the head of the organization. Then this part, the primary contact for is the grant writer. So I put they want to know who to contact with to have questions about the actual grant applications. That'd be me because I filled it out, right? So you put in the executive director and you put in the grant writer. There's places for both of those. Then they get to this section, a very important section called your grant request. Describe the services for which you're seeking support. And so we're asking for general operating support. That's the type of request. That's usually contrasted with if you have a specific project, like you want them to fund a banquet or a 5K walk or something like that. Otherwise, you just want general support, which means they just give you some money that's not restricted. It's not designated to a particular project. That's the best kind of money because you can spend it on whatever you want to. Okay. Some foundations don't do that, but most do. Okay. So then the type is there and then the amount. So we're asking for $25,000. The term means how long is this going to be for? And usually it's for a year. So you always put 12 for 12 months. Okay. And it tells you how to answer there. Then the project program or program title, we don't have a specific project. So again, we put general operations and organization. Proposed number of people to be served, example 2,000. If not applicable, enter 0. Well, we're not trying to serve a specific number of people with this money. We just want general money to operate with. So we put 0, which is a perfectly good answer. Then the description of the request. Provide a brief description of the request. So here you have to come up with your sales pitch. This is the quick, short answer where you specifically say, this is what we're doing. This is how this money is going to help us. So that's really the core of your whole application is a description of the request. That's where you've really worked to hone your statements so they're very compelling and they let them know exactly what you're doing, exactly what you're going to be needing the money for. So that's like, if you're going to spend any time working on your verbiage and your language, that's where you want to focus a lot of your time, is having a good, compelling description of the request. Then the purpose. So this is the purpose of your organization. You could say, describe the need being addressed in your organization's unique role, meeting those needs. So you've got to have a good purpose statement. So this one had plenty of room for that. This whole thing right here is the purpose statement. So it's 4 paragraphs. And that's just kind of your general language of what you describe about your organization. Okay. Description of activities, also an important field. You're going to want to have a good statement. And so they give you quite a bit of information. This is the note about the question of how to answer, and then this is the answer right here. Okay, these are the kind of activities that TSHF in this case carries out. What do we do during the year? We have classes, we do mentoring, we do banquets, whatever. The description of activities is real specific there. Then they're going to ask about the sustainability plan. Also, a very important thing to know, how are you going to sustain your organization even if you don't get the money? And so you got to think about that. What are you going to say? And I usually help people come up with that because that's not that obvious sometimes. Then they want to know the challenges that you're going to face. Whoops. Challenges. Okay. And describe your challenges and then so we have a challenge statement. Here's some of the challenges we expect to face. Goals. They want to know your goals. Here's our answer on our goals. We have a whole series of goals we want to accomplish in the year. And then demographics for this request. In other words, what kind of people are you serving? And you can specify certain age groups. There's ethnicities can be specified. Geography can be specified. Population served. But sometimes if you're just helping everybody, you could just say not specified. General or unspecified is a perfectly good answer if that fits what you're doing. If you're targeting a certain group, put that in there. If you're just generally helping everybody, you can say that as well. And then there's a place called additional demographics where you can just put in some more of just an open statement of things talking about who you serve. And so this one says, oh goodness, TSHF serves college students, educators, and professionals in the field of audiology and speech pathology across the state of Texas. So you're just able to elaborate more about who you serve and the maybe the geography of that, or however you want to do that. Okay, so then they want to give you space to talk about your project. Well, you're not doing a project, you're doing general support, right? General operating funds. And it says if you're doing general operating funds, just skip this part and go to the next part. So that's what we did. We didn't put anything here or here because we're not asking for specific project money. So you can just skip. Those are optional fields. They're not mandatory. Then they want to see a project budget. Well, there's no project budget because we're not doing a project. So forth. So you skip down. So that what you're going to do is you'll skip all those fields and go right to organization, financials, acknowledgement, again, because you're not doing a specific project, but you're asking for general operating support. So you get to skip the project section. Okay. Organizational financials, acknowledgement, they're going to ask you specific questions about your finances, like when does your fiscal year end, the last fiscal year you completed, they want the date of that. And then the financials that tie to that year end, it's your last year end financials. What were your unrestricted net assets, your total net assets, and change in net assets? That's looking at your overall financials for your organization. Your accountant needs to be able to tell you what those amounts are, right? Your financial reports need to show that. Then in current fiscal year, they want you to look at this year, because the one we just did was looking backwards. Now looking forward, what's your budget for this year? When does the fiscal year end? What is projected revenue, projected expenses, percentage of total expenses allocated toward administrative costs. But remember, because we want to keep our administrative costs low so that most of the money goes to the clients, right? So they want you to show most of your budget is for helping clients with their needs, and maybe, in this case, 12% of the budget was for administrative overhead. You want to keep that below 20% if at all possible. If you have an endowment, which you don't, you put that here, that's optional. Endowment means you have a whole big chunk of money sitting in the bank that you can tap into if you need to, because somebody gave you a huge gift. We won't get into that right now. If you have an operating deficit, which means you lost money last year, you put that here, but that wouldn't apply to most people. Most nonprofits don't lose money from year to year. And then grant acknowledgement, there's a place where you can check, yes, I completed this form, I understand it. And there's another understanding part you check. And then, so that's the end of the application. That wasn't that many questions. I know it looks like a lot, but I've seen more. But that's the end of the application. And then they give you an index of all your attachments that you attached when you submitted the application. So they had it required a board list, an organizational summary, organizational budget, other funding sources, financial statements, IRS determination. We attached all those, and then we hit submit, and it just gave us a list of what we had attached. So that is a review of what a completed grant application looks like. I always save those. When the email comes in, I save it as a PDF, and then I attach it to that funder's record in the database. And we talked a little bit about that last week. Any questions about that?
No, I don't have any questions.
Is that about what you
Pretty good
expected?
information. It's very detailed. So this is what you receive back after you have submitted the application,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Okay.
They're basically confirming that they received your application and just giving you a copy of it.
Okay, so you put everything in the computer
Right.
and fill in all the blanks, and then this is the okay.
Yeah. After you hit submit, this shows up in your inbox maybe like a minute or two later,
Okay. And then that way you could review over anything to see if you missed something or something.
Well,
like
at that point, it's too late. You've already
okay.
submitted it. There's opportunities to print it. If you're in the middle of doing it and you want to print it out, they allow that as well. You can make a hard copy of your progress. But I like to have it just to keep a good record of everything. You need a good paper trail, and you can go back and review it. And a lot of times, if you wrote something really good, and you want to use that again, in a new application, you could copy and paste from that PDF into a new application. So, all right. So that was the review of an actual grant application. The next thing we're going to talk about is relational versus non-relational grant seeking, relationships, networking, and referrals. So this is a real important part of it. I just want to drill down on a little bit. We've talked about the fact that if you're writing a grant to an organization, you're applying for money, and we're talking about a lot of money here, tens of thousands of dollars, and you're writing that grant to an organization that doesn't know you and you don't know them. You just got their name somewhere, right? And you're writing them a letter, or you're filling out a web form application. That you have no relationship there. That is a very non-productive way of fundraising. Okay, I estimate that you only have about a 20% chance of success. So you've got to write 5 of those typically to get one donor to give you money. If you're just writing them an application with it, and then they've never heard of you, and this is the first time they're seeing you, you don't want to ask for too much money at that point. You want to try to get your foot in the door. So I usually say keep if it's brand new, you don't know anything about them, and they don't know you, ask for $5,000 or $10,000. That way, they're likely to do it, and then you have a relationship with them. Once they give you that first donation, then you're in, right? But getting that first donation is just kind of tricky. So we want to move from non-relational fundraising to relational, right? Where you have a relationship. And the best way to do that is to get referrals, to get somebody to refer you over. Like one of your board members knows somebody at this wealthy organization. Let's just use the Ross Perot Jr. Foundation. Okay. Ross Perot Jr., is the son of Ross Perot. He and his wife have a foundation. They're very generous, and they're based in the Fort Worth area, and they're Christian people, right? If you just write them a letter, they may or may not respond. But if you know somebody that works there, or you know somebody on the board, or one of your friends knows somebody on the board, and you can get some sort of a referral and a connection that way, where you can talk to somebody on the phone, meet with them, and then ask them for money, your chances of getting that money are going to be greatly improved. Make sense, Miss Rochelle?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because, yeah, you're taking a stab in the dark if you don't know
Right.
anyone. It's like any business relationship. You have to cultivate a relationship,
Right.
and then you have to, earn trust, and then you get
Right.
actual
So,
business. It's just business to business.
right. So doing it the other way, it's sort of like gambling. You're just rolling
Yeah,
the
that's
dice.
like pulling the slot wheel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're rolling the dice on that deal.
yeah, it is.
Uh, so if you don't know them, you probably have about a 20% chance of success. If you know them and have a relationship, it's about a 50% chance. But if they invite you to apply, if they like you and they say, hey, yeah, write us a letter or send us a grant application, we're interested in you. Oh, that's the golden ticket right there. Your success rate goes to probably 80% probability, right? If they invite you to apply, that's what you're trying to get to. Is they see you, they know you, you've presented your mission, and they like it, and they say, yes, we're interested, please apply. Most likely you're going to get that money. I would say it's 80% probability or more.
How would you approach someone that you actually met? You don't know them, to clarify, and they
Right.
don't know you. You met them in a meeting with another person.
Right.
And you spoke directly to them.
Right.
They are the foundation. And but it was a meeting with 5 other people in the room.
Right.
So, and then the people that were, and it was only because it was a business meeting.
Right.
People, they were invited And as you say, they came out to view the facility and everything and talk with the people about funding a grant for them.
Right.
Okay. And then I was the guest speaker
Right.
for that. And so the people, they received the grant and they said, well, at least you've met them and you've seen their face
Right.
and you talked with them. Maybe you can apply for a grant with them at some future date. At least they may remember talking to you.
Right.
How do you approach that one?
Well, that's a great question, Rochelle. So in that case, I always recommend the 48-hour rule. If you will follow up with that person on the phone within 48 hours, they're more likely to remember you. Like if you wait like 7 weeks, to call them, they might not remember you by that point, right? But
Okay.
if you'll jump right on that, try to get their phone number in that conversation. Always have business cards with you and offer them your business card and ask for their business card in return. That's the
Okay.
essence of networking. If you
Okay.
didn't get that, ask your common friend. You have a friend in common, right? So like I'm assuming we're talking about Six Stones here, right? So ask somebody at Six Stones, what's the contact information for that person? If you didn't get the person's phone number directly, get it through your connection, right? And call them. And if you get their voicemail, leave them a detailed voicemail. Hey, it's me. You met me at the conference. I would love to talk to you about what we're doing, because you're in sales. You're in sales at that point. You're selling.
Okay.
And you got to use all your business skills and all your sales skills and all your networking skills because you're trying to turn that contact into a relationship. Right.
Okay.
So they may be very friendly and open and talk to you over the phone and let you make your pitch over the phone. If assuming they return your call, right? You leave a message, they return your call. You better have your sales pitch ready right then. Make a good, compelling presentation and just be honest with them. We're seeking funding for this organization. I hope that what we're doing is of interest to you, and just go right into it. Don't be shy. Don't be all embarrassed. Don't be
Okay.
awkward. Man, you got to be bold, right? You got to be excited about what you're doing, right?
Okay.
And if they get excited, if they're like, "Oh, this is very interesting to us," you're in the door, right? If they're cold and they're not interested, man, just say bless you and move on.
Okay.
But you're
Okay.
looking for that chemistry. You're looking for some chemistry. You're looking for some common cause and some momentum there. And if they do say yes, I'm interested, say, well, what's my next step? Can I bring you a proposal? Can I bring you a letter? What can I do? Go look at our website. Whatever they need to. If they say, well, I need more information, tell them, well, we've got a great website, or whatever your next step is to get them more information, and be willing to hand carry that to them, to drive to their office. I don't care if they're on the east side of Dallas. Go over there. If a door like that opens with a potential funder, you need to make it as personal and relational as possible, right?
Okay.
So be very hands-on, old-fashioned, and right after that call, if they take your call and they listen to your pitch and they're friendly, you should send them some sort of a thank you just for that,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
A thank you text, or a thank you email, or a thank you note if you want to be real fancy, right? Just for talking to you, because you want to stand out.
Yes.
You want to stand out in their mind. So the more points along the process that you say thank you, the more you're going to stand out.
Okay, cool.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that a little later too.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes, it's very helpful
Good.
because I've actually met about 3 people, but I'm like, how do you approach them?
Right.
And yeah, then how do you approach them professionally and correctly as far as
Right.
funding?
Right.
Right.
And you got to remember that wealthy people, either they're giving personally or through a foundation, they get asked for money on average 2 to 3 times a day.
Right.
I mean, people are just hitting on them all the time. They're used to it. That's just part of it. They're called philanthropists, right? They're in
Okay.
philanthropy. And philanthropists just give out money. And so they know that people are going to be asking them for money all the time. It's not like awkward. It's not inappropriate. You should be
Okay. Okay.
polite, and you
That's
should be
it.
polite and respectful, but you should also be clear. Um,
Okay.
because you don't want to seem like you're trying to manipulate them somehow, to get money. You just be, hey, I'm excited about what we're doing. I think you will be too. Let me tell you what we do. Just launch into it, right? Because you don't want to
Okay,
waste their
great.
time. You don't want to waste their time. You want to be honest. You want to be friendly and positive, but you also want to be businesslike and just get right to the point.
Okay, cool.
They,
Okay.
most of these people are wealthy because they were good at business, right?
Right.
And they want to see nonprofit leaders like yourself have some business sense. They're going to relate to you better if you look like you got your act together, and you've got some business savvy, right? If you're just like, well, we love Jesus and you should give us some money, that's not a very compelling.
Right.
Maybe true, but that's not a compelling thing. You're like, well, we've got a plan and we've got a board and we've got this mission and we've got this. We need this amount of money. And we know it's going to help this many people. You better be able to pop out some fruit, some results where it sounds compelling, right? You're taking action. You're helping people. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to give you charity because you're poor. They want to invest in their community and they want to put
Right.
their dollars where if they see you as being effectively impacting the community in a positive way, that's where they want to invest. You want to see them as investors, not just donors that are just blessing you because you're poor, right? That's not a great way to, if you're going around with your hat in your hand, say, well, we're so poor, we're trying to help the poor, but we're poor. Please help us. That's sad. I mean, that's just sad. That's old fashioned fundraising. You want to say, man, we're helping people in this community and we're starting to see lives change and we just need some more money and we'll be able to do more. That's pretty much the essence of it. If you've
Okay,
got a
cool.
good system, you've got a good program, all it's going to take to scale up is more money. If we just had more money, we could even help this many more people, right? You don't want to look like you're helpless or just starting out or clueless or any of that stuff. You want to look like you got a plan. And even if you're
Right.
young,
Okay, good.
even if your
It makes
organization is
sense.
young, you better have a plan for making stuff happen, right?
I know, right? It makes sense that, and you answered very well with, they are accustomed. They used to people coming up to them 2, 3 times a day. People ask them for money 2, 3, 4 times a day.
Right.
They're used to it. So do not be hesitant
Right.
and
It's
thinking, yeah, because that's all they do is give out money. So they're used to it. So
right.
I think that was the stumbling block for me. I'm like,
Right.
you don't just, because being cordial, you just do not walk up to a person and ask for money.
Right.
But they're used to it and
Right.
that's what they do. And for these 3 people, that's what you do. And you have your paperwork ready and your ducks in a row, and you be ready to go with a nod of a head. Okay.
Right.
Okay, good.
Right. And there's an art to it. It's not a science, Rochelle. It's an art. You'll work it out.
Right.
You'll work out
Right.
the rhythm of it and the manners of it, and you're
Right.
just gonna have to you're gonna have to read the crowd in a sense. You're gonna have to read some people are very guarded and protective, and others are real open and friendly, and you're just gonna have to
Right.
adapt
Okay.
to that. But you should never be ashamed of what you do, or else you shouldn't
Right.
be
And
doing
you
it,
said
right?
just be bold, just make your
Just put it
statement
out
and
there
be
and
bold and be enthusiastic about it and
right.
draw the energy in. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
and be
All right.
positive because if people say no, you're going to hear some no's. You just gotta be resilient. You just gotta that's got to be water off a duck's back. You're just one no closer to a yes. That's what I always say.
That's
So
correct.
and you just gotta and I've developed this philosophy in life. I just say, hey, anybody that doesn't want to be my friend is missing a blessing. Because I'm a
Right.
good friend, right? If they don't
Right.
want to partner with you, then they weren't the one. God's got somebody else. But you got
Okay,
to get out
cool.
there and mix it up. You got to show up. You got to be in the community. You got to attend a few events. Like if Six Stones is opening some doors for you, or there's a coalition meeting of this, or some big happening, a ribbon cutting over at the YMCA or whatever. Just show up, because these funders are out there. They in the nonprofit world, the funders show up at these events too. They want to see you out there. They want to. The name of your organization needs to get out there.
Okay,
And
cool.
I heard a very wise person say recently, if your mouth is closed, your business is closed.
Yeah,
That's
that's true.
pretty that's pretty profound right there, So you
Yeah,
gotta
it
be out there.
is.
You gotta be
That
talking this
is.
thing up. But
That
then
is, that's old school. A closed mouth won't get fed. Yeah.
that's right. So,
Yeah.
but then you can't be talk only. You better have a business card, a brochure, a PowerPoint. You need to have your supporting materials ready to go in case you get an opportunity. They might say, "Oh, we need a speaker next week over here at the junior league. Would you come and be our speaker and talk about your organization?" If you're ready, doors like that will open. Well, you better have a decent looking PowerPoint to put up there. You can't just get up there and stumble and stutter around. If you're the speaker at the junior league, you better be ready for stuff like that. So that's why it's important to have a nice website, a nice brochure, and a nice PowerPoint that all kind of match. And we're not talking about grant writing right now. We're talking about fundraising. This is how
Right.
you be in fundraising, right?
Right.
So you better look like you got your act together. You better be ready when the doors open. That's my philosophy.
Okay. That's good.
Okay, so another secret to success in all this is to say thank you when there's a failure, when there's a funder fail. You get a letter saying, "Well, we're sorry, we considered your application and we're not able to fund you this year." Okay. Now, how many did you know there's lots of funders who give money to a nonprofit and the nonprofit never says thank you for the money, much less if they don't get the money, right? Which is just sad. So you for sure want to be very grateful. If you get a donation, man, you need to write them a letter. You need to, do something special for them. Every donation you get, you need to appreciate that. But if you get a turn down, if you get a denial, and you write them a letter saying thank you for the opportunity, we appreciate that you read our application. We hope that if you ever are interested in having a conversation again in the future, that you'd consider us. Some positive letter that's going to blow their mind, because they hardly get thank yous for the people they do give money to, much less for the people they don't give money to, right? And so make sure that you're being very thankful and very vocal about that, your gratitude for what they're doing and so forth and so on. That's a great tip that'll put you ahead of the crowd right there. Okay. Also, since we're on denial letters, you will get some denial letters, and they come in two forms. One of them, they're pretty blunt about, we don't really help organizations like yours, like you're in the wrong category or something. They're just like, no, we're just gonna, and it's that door just sort of closes, right? So in the database, you want to put a little note by them, not didn't work out, right? Don't pursue them anymore. But a lot of denial letters say, we weren't able to fund you this year. Please be sure to apply again next year. Boy, you better pay attention to those, because that's like an invitation to apply, really. So if you get a denial letter, about 75% of the time they'll say, we couldn't do it this year, but please apply again next year. Make sure you thank them for that, and also track that so that you remember to apply the next year at the appropriate date. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about some abbreviations real quick, some terms that I use. Let me get the screen put up here. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'm going to talk about some abbreviations here. So in grant writing, I use some abbreviations that I think are helpful. I use the letters capital F, lowercase dn, and that's just short for foundation. Rather than type it out, the word foundation all the time, in your notes, in your database, just use FDN. But don't use it if you're putting the name of the organization like on a letter. Always spell out the foundation's name fully. But in your internal communications, you can abbreviate foundation as FDN. FDO is the Foundation Directory Online. That's the big database that you can subscribe to that has all the funders and all the grant information that is in the United States. Okay, so FDO, we'll talk about FDO quite a bit as we go along. That's it's run by an organization called Candid, and candid.org has the FDO Foundation Directory Online product. And we'll talk more about that later. FPD, that's the Funder Prospect Database. That's the database that I wrote in Microsoft Access that I showed you last week. That's the FPD. And then the GWGD is the grant writing guidance document. That's where we write out all of our standard answers to all the questions. Remember how we talked last week about you should write out all your answers ahead of time so that they're well thought out and that you have them written to so you can copy and paste into a grant application. We'll talk more about that as well. We're going to go through that in another session in great detail. And then as we talked about last week, there's a LOI is a letter of inquiry. And in business, an LOI stands for letter of intent, which means you intent, you write a letter saying if we intend to bid on this one, but this LOI is nonprofit grant writing. It's called a letter of inquiry. And as we talked about last week, that's what you write to them when they say, hey, we don't have an application form per se, just send us a letter. And so we went through that and looked at one of those last week. So those are the main abbreviations and phrases that I use that I wanted to cover in this class today, just to go over those because I use those frequently in my work. Any questions about that?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let's see. Okay, that's really, we got through everything a little bit early today. So that's all the presentation I had. Do you want to have any question? Yeah, I'm open the floor to discussions, questions, comments, anything like that.
I'm pretty well good. Everything is straightforward and explained pretty good.
Thank you.
So I am just on the okay. So like my questions is I'm still having the same problem with the statements, the impact statement, the purpose statement, and they're like so close together,
Right.
but they're separate. I was reviewing the grant submission made it a little bit clearer on
Right.
how you place information in each line item. And so, being very new to this process, it's like, we just have the mission statement, the vision statement, and the statement of purpose, which are, pretty
Yeah.
similar. We've discussed that before too. It's
Well,
one vision, which is one mission, which is one purpose. But when you separate them, I guess within this last 3 weeks, it's still trying to get through my head how to
okay.
separate those out.
Okay,
And
that's a great question. Let's talk about that. So I don't want to confuse you here because I know you're new. But what I've learned is you have to read that grant application web page carefully because what one funder calls an impact statement might be different than what another funder. When they say impact statement, they might mean two different things.
yes,
So that's why
correct.
they put a little paragraph like this. The question will be called impact statement, but then it says, tell us the blah 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 blah.
Right.
They tell you what they want in that box. They're calling it an impact statement, but you're going to have to take the stuff you've written already and thought through about your organization. You've got over here on the side, you've got a mission statement, a vision statement, a purpose statement, impact statement. You've got all the stuff that you've written, right? But then
Okay.
you've got to read their question and you've got to put in there the pieces of your stuff that match what they're asking for. You might have to customize it. In other words, you thought you had an impact statement, but when they say put your impact statement here,
Right.
and then they
Okay.
describe it, they're actually describing something different, right?
Okay. So
That's
that's it.
real subtle, and that's kind of
Okay.
advanced. That's kind of tricky, but that's what I've learned.
Okay,
Okay,
good. Okay, good. Because I thought
so
it was me just not understanding. I was like,
yeah, it's a little. I mean, there's not like super standards on all this. They don't all mean the same thing when they use a certain phrase. They kind of
Okay,
they
it's
make up some of
all
these terms. They use these
interchangeable.
terms the way they want to use them, and you've got to adapt to that, right?
Is okay, so it
Now,
is interchangeable.
I will say though, um, they get that. A lot of these nonprofits that are applying are not real sophisticated. So if you put in a pretty good answer and it wasn't really what they're looking for, but you made a good effort, they're going to be like, well, bless their heart, that looks good. I mean, they're not going to kick you out because you didn't have this really compelling paragraph or two that was really exactly what they needed and you didn't word it right, so they're kicking you out. As long as you have a reasonable answer, they tend to be pretty tolerant. There's some
Okay, okay, good.
flexibility in there, right? So you give it your best effort because sometimes they ask the most ridiculous stuff that's so obscure and so silly. You don't have any idea really how to answer that. Like, describe the metrics that you use and the tools that you're using to measure progress of improvement in people's lives. They get real specific, real technical. You're like, oh my gosh, we don't do that yet. We'd love to do that someday, but they may ask something that's really advanced or very complicated or very obscure, and you don't know how to answer it. If that field has a red asterisk by it, means it's mandatory, right? You've got to fill out
Right.
that box, even if it's some crazy answer. You have two choices at that point. You can often call them or email them and ask them for clarification. If the deadline is not like right on you, if you got a little
Right.
bit of time, they often provide for like email this email address if you have questions about this application. So you can ask for clarification, or you could just give it your best shot, right?
Okay.
And let's say they say, well, what database tool are you using to manage your grant funding? And you don't have one. Let's say you don't have a database. You could say, well, we're pretty new and we want to have a database eventually, but we don't have that. But we have a plan to get that like in year 3. So as long as you have a good answer, you may not have the right tool, but you've got a plan to get that tool. That's still a reasonable answer because they realize you might be small or new or not well funded yet. But you gotta make your best effort to answer the question. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Well,
That makes sense.
I'm giving you some good information right now. I mean, you can't learn this anywhere else. It took me years to figure this stuff out. It really did.
I know,
This is
and
the
you're very
subtle, these are the
good.
nuances. These are the nuances that come in.
Yes, you're very good because it's correct. It's like it's almost zigzag because you have your
Right.
information, but the way that they ask for it, you're like maybe have to think 2 or 3 times. What are they exactly
Right.
asking for? And they'll give you a description, and sometimes you'll say like, "Wasn't that the last question that they
Yeah.
asked?"
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
you, you
you're
know,
like,
you're just going to have to navigate that, but always be eager to ask for help. Ask them for clarification or ask me or somebody else in your life. Hey, this doesn't make sense to me. Would you take a look at this? What do you think? Try to if you have the luxury of time, if you have time, because a lot of times there's deadlines and you're rushing, but if you have time, try to put your best application out there. Get help, have somebody proofread it, all those things to enhance the quality. Because remember, these things are often competitive. You're competing for that money, and you better have an amazing application. That's what you're striving for. Okay.
right. That was the other thought. I'm like, it's like taking a test and you have to score 95% because it's a million people. It's just
Uh,
like a job interview.
yeah.
It is basically, it's a job
Well, okay.
interview.
Now let me just clarify that though. Some of these foundations are not well known. They're very quiet. They're small. There's some family that's got $3 or $4 million and they give away, 10 grants a year for $10,000 each. Those those really are not that competitive. Nobody knows about them. They're not well advertised, right? So those are often what I would call low hanging fruit. You just ask for some money and you might get it, because they don't have that many people applying. So that's one end of the spectrum. But like you're saying, some of them at the other end of the spectrum are very competitive. And but typically you need to aspire to have as perfect a score as possible, a scale of 1 to 100. But if you are in a real competitive one like that, a lot of times it's a two-phase thing. You got to score like a 90 or above to make the first cut. and then they come and they look at those that made the cut, and then they might ask for some more information or something, a little follow on to see if you can then be selected, right? So just do your best, pray over it, do have a spirit of excellence in what you do, then pray over it, and then the rest is up to the Lord, right? um so that's you got to have some faith in this thing too.
That's
You,
true.
yeah, it's not just all
That's
the
the
sweat of
best.
your brow, it's not just
That's the best
your
advice
effort.
ever. Pray over it and whew, let God help you with it, and He'll open all the doors that you
Right.
need, and
But
He'll close the ones that
sometimes
you
he
don't
wants you to
need.
do some work. Sometimes you need to work for that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the grant writing
and
is definitely work.
yes, yeah. It's a actually as I get into following the outline, then it's a lot of work and you have to just understand it, and being new, it's exciting,
Right.
and it's something that we'll be able to do. It's very attainable, but to have it structured correctly
Right.
is what I'm looking at. Okay,
Well,
that was basically it.
okay. Well, I
So
got one more point. I want one more point about that. You, when I did the prisoner reentry program for Tarrant County, we started off with a grant of $40,000. But we were faithful with that, and we had fruit, and we had results, and we had outcomes, and we kept growing and growing, and we leveraged that over 5 years. We leveraged that up to $200,000. It took
wow,
5 years
okay.
of faithfulness, but if you get a grant and you're being productive and you're faithful, that can grow. That's the end game, is that you leverage that up, that you leverage that faithfulness into some success and increased
And
funding.
that's what we want to see, and that's what they want to see too.
Right.
And that's why they're funding it, so that it can have community impact and growth with it,
Right.
because nobody wants to just throw their money away and waste it. And so we're making a good impact. I just want to keep it going. And so, now we're like, we need funding for real. Okay. And so I'll
Okay.
get with
So
you on some, what do you call it, sponsorship letters and donation letters to make sure they're written correctly
right.
is
And
what I need to know for sure. If you have any
also, do you
examples,
have you found any grant opportunities yet that you need to
have
write a
I
grant
found any
to?
grant what yet?
Any grant opportunities? Has anything opened up yet where you need to write a grant?
I've looked through, well, yes, I can say yes. I have looked through. You sent a list of grants and foundations, and then I get a list from the um where do I get a list from? The mentoring organizations. I think it's whatever it is, the faith-based community in Washington, D.C., whatever they
Right.
call that. Okay, so there's like two lists, and then there was another one that I saw yesterday, which was the justice, juvenile justice. And the one on juvenile justice, it looked very, very good as for writing a grant. But we'll have to review it to see if we're qualified
Right.
as an organization. But all they wanted was mentoring juveniles that they would not go into the justice system. So that's what we do.
Right.
And so we mentor them to keep them out, and then working with children whose parents are incarcerated. That's a very high risk group for entering into the juvenile system.
Right.
And so those are the kids that we mentor. So I saw that, and it was not the ones that were already in juvenile, it's the one before they get to the system.
Yeah.
And I thought that one was very interesting. And it's through the, what is it, the NIJ or something of justice,
So
National
what's the
Institute of
deadline?
Justice.
What's the deadline?
It's like in May or June.
Okay.
It was
Good.
far. I can
Good.
send it to you, but it was pretty far.
Yeah,
And I
I'd be
was
glad to take a
thinking,
look at that for you if you want me to look at
okay, and
that.
I was thinking of with the classes that we're taking with you, we're not like we're not able to jump into anything real quick right now, but we've got like a month or two, which means that we should be a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, you got to see if you qualify first. Let's see if if you qualify, then we'll proceed.
Actually, for the criteria was for nonprofits, for profits, for anyone. It was just open to the public. So, and it did not say, and I'll read it again, it did not say that you had to partner with the state or the courts or anyone,
Okay.
because these are kids that are not in the system yet.
Right.
So I would think they're from, third
Yeah, that sounds
graders
good.
and up, to make sure they don't fall in the system. And I was like, that was a good one. I'll send it over to you because I pulled that one last night and I was reading through it, and it's overwhelming just to read.
Yeah.
I was
Those
like,
federal ones are. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it's from the government. So I was like, they have they just explained everything. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So that was more information for me to know what I'm looking for.
Sure.
So
Okay.
that
Well,
was basically it.
let's just target you sending that over to me, and we'll wrap up for today. How's that sound?
Okay, cool.
Okay, Aaron, God bless you. Rochelle, God bless you. We will do it again next week.
All right. Have a good evening or
Okay.
good day.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.